time to support a festival which is a fledgling one. Just before the session began, Mr. Babchi was asking me, he said, what got you into this? And that's a question I ask myself every single day as I toil through the process of putting the festival together. But really the idea was to help all of us be on a platform where we can engage with such thought leaders, authors, practitioners, and gaining from their experience, their learning. A lot of it is being captured in books, but a lot needs to be eked out. And over to our panelists now.
Great. So, welcome to the second edition of the non-fiction literary festival. I was asking Kumar, how on earth did you get into this racket? So, it's amazing that he's chosen to back non-fiction. And it's really nice to see so many people here to attend the second literary festival. I hope that this grows 10 times bigger next year. With that hope, let me quickly welcome both Kiran and Ajit. And before we get started, I want to do a trivia. I want you to answer a question. Whoever answers the question gets a special gift from Kumar. Kumar, are you there? Okay. So, people under the age of 40 will be first. Well, go ahead. No. Go ahead. You raise the hand first. Are there any under 40 contenders here? No. Okay. So go ahead. No. Well, St. Stephen's was the big thing those days, but it isn't the case. So. Ajit actually grew up in Kerala, went to the Kerala University and studied physics there, went to IIM Calcutta, and after that, at a time when professional entrepreneurs were very difficult to come by, Ajit co-founded Rediffusion. And that became a path-breaking ad agency at the time. I don't know, Kiran, if you know the famous Jensen-Nicholson ad that they created, which said, when you think of right. It was quite path-breaking, and then come Rajiv Gandhi election time, Rediffusion actually probably became the first advertising agency to do the public relations makeover for a political party.
No, yeah, but I remember it was the only ad campaign that a political party had ever had.
That's right. And from there on, went on to invest 26% equity in a company which is not there in its original form today, called PSI Data Systems, which was the first private sector computer R&D in the country, which was doing leading edge work for defense applications and so on. And Ajit and his team practically pulled it from the brink, and at that time I had the pleasure and the privilege of working for somebody who worked for him. So Ajit was my boss's boss, and it's a great feeling to be sitting next to him. I will ask you a trivia about Kiran in a moment, but Ajit, why don't I start off by asking a question? And that question is, what is the most significant memory of growing up in Kerala?
Oh, I don't know when. I think in '59, the communist government got elected. I remember that I was 11 years old then, or 10 years old. And it was the first elected communist government in the world. And my father was a doctor, my grandparents were doctors, so we were the bourgeoisie, so to speak. And I remember graphically how things changed. Land reform movement started, and Kerala became what it is today, a very progressive place, etc. That's still striking in my mind, That's
So is there a communist in you?
I know, I don't know. I'm a business executive, so how can I be a communist? I can't say it.
Okay, so thank you for that, Ajit. Now, Kiran. So here's a trivia on Kiran. Who in the audience, and you have to be able to answer this question, particularly with so many Gen Y people here. When Kiran went to school in Calcutta, what is the name of that school? What school did she go to in Calcutta? And we double the prize this time, you know. No? Loreto, no. You did?
I did.
Oh, I thought you went to La Marthe.
La Martiniere for my high school, but
Okay.
Loreto for till the 10th.
So you did it. So would you identify yourself to Kumar, who is giving away return air ticket to Moon? So Kumar, you have to give out those 2 prizes. Well, so very fascinating to see, see a thinking filmmaker like her, who has a very interesting footprint in the sense that you're born in Bangalore.
No, yes, born, yes.
Oh,
Just about, because I came to Cal.
nobody is just about born and yeah, so you're born in Bangalore, went to Cal, uprooted from Cal, came to Mumbai, studied here, and then finished your formal college in Delhi and came back. So you are one of those very unique people who have done the entire metro scene, you know, leaving aside, of course, Chennai. So here's my question to you. If you were not doing films, making films, what would you be doing?
Well, I'd be working in the development sector, I think. It's still something that interests me deeply, and I think I've always, I did economics thinking that I would do developmental economics later as, as my postgrad specialization. But, film and more than film, just the arts were my first love, and I decided to pursue that. But if I had a chance, and then I realized, of course, developmental work or work in the social sector doesn't need a degree and certainly just needs intent. So I said I should do what I love because I can always do that later. So I would, if I didn't do film, I would most definitely be working in the social sector.
Fantastic. So over to the theme of the conference. The theme is India, the time is now, nothing to do with Arnab Goswami. And so on that theme, I want to ask Ajit first and Kiran, and then we can go a little bit of back and forth.
Mic that you have for the audience later, maybe you can give it to us now because passing the mic will be a bit of a drag.
Okay, that's good. Thank you for doing that. So Ajit, here is the thought. You know, we're talking about India, your time is now. But before we even explore that, it would be nice to know from you, what does the idea of India mean to you? And what does it mean to be an Indian today, here and now, to you?
I think this year, the past few months, and the next 4 months or so, this is a topic which is going to be up front. I think many different Indias are being sought to be constructed by the AAP, the BJP, and the Congress, I think. And during election time, once in 5 years, India reconstructs itself. And that's the dynamism of our country. In a fundamental way, we ask, I live in Colaba, so I need to go up and decide to vote. Should I vote for Milind Deora? He's Congress. And historically, I've voted Congress, but then he's a son of somebody, so that's against my meritocratic nature. Who's the alternative? So there's a Shiv Sena person who stands for something which maybe the party I don't fully believe in, but this particular candidate works, does a very good job in the Colaba slums, and half of Colaba is slums, as you know. So you keep at the voting booth, it's an interesting line which forms there in that Duns Institute School. There would be somebody like me, in front of me will be the fruit seller, then there will be a vegetable vendor, then there's Ratan Tata above, before that, and 2, 3 others, It's a great equalizer. The election's a great equalizer. So these are the moments we think, who do I vote for? What do I stand for meritocracy versus party symbols? I don't know the clear answer, but I think what is being Indian implies being very tolerant of, there are 6 of us Indians, I always found there are 9 views on any topics, and we are very comfortable with that, you know. We are willing to accept.
Are we comfortable? Are we comfortable? Because
I think so, which is why we argue so much against each other all the time.
no, but aren't we getting to be an angry nation? And anger is such a...
I think it's a sign of passion that you care. Or you can be like dumb as cattle and saying, you know, the argument's gone. I think in almost any forum that we meet, there are these arguments. Sometimes you can call it ranting, but most often you sit and have what in Calcutta they call adda sessions, and you know, I think that's part of being Indian. You know, I fully embrace it.
So your view right now is India being an Indian, and the idea of India is more political.
No. The discussion could be about rights of women, or who was it coined the phrase, the argumentative Indian?
Yeah, Amartya Sen.
Correct, something like that. So that's central to our existence, and I hope that never changes.
Okay, thanks, Ajit. Kiran, what does the idea of India mean to you, and what does it mean to be an Indian here today and now?
To begin with, I hope you don't mind me calling you by your first names.
Of course we mind.
Because there's so much senior to me in both achievements and
That's not
age,
a nice thing to say, to call somebody senior.
In achievements.
No, that's
Clearly
not true.
head and shoulders far, far ahead of me. So I'm really happy to be on a panel with the two of you. But for me, I kind of agree with Ajit. I was thinking about it after we had our conversation, and I think it's a much discussed subject that we sort of cohabit so many Indias at one time, and this diversity, while it's so complex, at the end of the day is also our great strength, and is also something that I personally take great pride in. So I think for me, being Indian is the idea of inclusion, the idea that all these discussions, all these arguments, and all these points of view need to be discussed, need to be put on the table, and need to be considered before we sort of take a decision on anything. And India cannot be looked at just through, say, the economic perspective of pink papers, or just the political angle. Like he said, I have the same dilemmas when I go for elections every year, because do you vote for somebody who is doing a lot, or do you vote for somebody whose party is more your ideology? So it's a number of issues that we deal with as Indians, I think, every year and every day. And I think for me, the idea of India and the idea of a robust India is one that engages all these different points of view, and doesn't look on it as, doesn't try to make it one singular notion or one singular identity.
Yeah, I think that's very well said, because it can't be one notion, one identity. And many times I find myself asking, so whose India is it anyway? We'll come back to the India question later with you. Ajit, talk to us a little bit about entrepreneurship. The other day when we were talking about, your recollection of this meeting, this father of a young graduate from IIM Calcutta, in your capacity as the chairman of the board of governors of IIM Calcutta. And you had a very fascinating perspective on who's graduating today, what this meritocracy that you alluded to a little while ago about how that's transforming, and talk to us about the entrepreneur in New India as against the, the traditional view of what big business is all about.
Well, there's the little narrative that you alluded to is something like this. During the convocation, I'm the guy who stands in a robe and hands out diplomas to everybody. At the end, 500 students graduate every year, and the parents come. That's the first time you realize the super bright kid, and this is the parents he comes from. Last year, there was a case where there was a man standing aside in a dhoti and veshti from Andhra Pradesh, and he barely spoke English, barely, but he wanted to shake my hands, and with his wife, and they're both in their 50s. And a young bright son came and introduced his dad, because the father didn't speak English. So I asked him, what do you do? And the father says, I have a 3 or 4 acre plot of land in Andhra Pradesh where I grow dal. Okay, and this son was graduating that year. He was one of the merit rank holders. from his father, who was a small farmer. And he had just got a job with Morgan Stanley for $150,000. You know, that's the new India. You know, people who, given a chance and given a meritocratic system like a CAT exam and dispassionate recruiting, I think education remakes in the Indian elite, you know. So there was one more narrative. So, you know, just 2 weeks ago, I was in a flight, late night flight, Indigo from Delhi to Bombay. And I tell my secretary, always give me a seat around 20, 21, 22. That's, you mix up and hear things. So this youngster next to me with an iPad playing some things. After a while, I asked him, you know, what do you do? He said, sir, I'm a sales representative for a company called Eli Lilly, the pharmaceutical company. And his company had taken him to Delhi for a training program. So I asked him, what does your father do? And he says, my father is a taxi driver in Bombay.
Wow.
And I said,
That's amazing.
I didn't know what to say. Then I said, but where do you guys come from? He said, Eastern UP. His dad came here in 87 or 88 or something in that period. And that was the only job he could do. And he had educated both of his sons to college. And there was this kid.
Fantastic.
And he's another brother. So after a while, he asked about me, and I told him who I am. And then as I was leaving, I said, I'm sure one day you will be CEO of Eli Lilly worldwide. And he said, yeah.
That's very, very nice, very
He
nice.
was perfectly confident that he will get there. So this is India too.
I will come back to the entrepreneurship thing, and I want your reflection on that. But before that, since we are having a nice flow of conversation here, Kiran, you talked about the derivative India and how she talked about when we were having a conversation some time back. And she was talking about how for the first time, very first time, since us becoming an independent country, or probably even older than that, as a nation, as a society, we are departing from being a derivative country. Tell us a little more about your thought on that.
Well, I sort of was growing up, I think, at a time when we were still fairly colonial as a nation. And I mean, I sort of, when I look at my education and I look at Calcutta back then, as Marxist as it was, there were education and all our institutions were still fairly colonial. And all my references, for instance, are not Indian references. So I, very often felt that I don't really know my country well enough. I mean, I grew up in a little bit of a bubble of Calcutta with being educated, being from a particular part of society. And as when I came to Bombay after, did my college here and came back to work here, I found that cable television, of course, had just started and had just picked up, and Indian channels were now on air. And I could see the struggle to build a particular cultural identity for the youth of this nation through music channels, through other kinds of cultural spaces. And it was all fairly, it was all very interesting and exciting and a lot of use of kitsch, but there was a struggle to determine, it was always a little bit of an amused look at India. So we were still on the outside. It was always a look at India which was tongue-in-cheek to say, oh, we are like this only, we do all these bizarre things, and let's accept ourselves. It was an interesting take, and it was, I think, the first step to being able to admit that we have so many kinds of Indians. We have so many cultures that are ours, and that may not be mine, may not be yours, but are ours. And from there, I feel we have now, in the last 10 to 15 years since I came to Mumbai and started working, I feel that we've accepted ourselves a lot more. We've come to a place where I think we are beginning to explore the idea of culture as a people who are comfortable with who we are. I think it's at least I feel it among the youth today, that there isn't so much anxiety and angst, so much about putting themselves in a space in the world, this is what they're doing everywhere else, which is what happened, when liberalization happened, people suddenly could spend money, and there was money to be had, and people could wear jeans and, your branded clothes. I think we've come now to a place where that anxiety has slowly, I feel, reduced. And so there is a space now for us to be able to create culture from a truly unique position of being Indian on this world stage, which we are. We are very clearly a country to be reckoned with, a country that the whole world is interested in, and a country that has an enormous legacy that sometimes becomes a big burden, but is actually greatly informs us as a cultural, as a cultural nation. So, so now I think we are in a position, and I think we are, as youth today, I see it in the youth today, defining an identity for ourselves that is truly unique and that is contemporary, that is robust and contemporary in the world. And I think that's the most exciting thing about, I'm not saying that we are already producing cultural artifacts or producing, wonderful things that are going to be of great significance. But this is the beginning. I think the beginning is to be able to situate yourself, to be able to feel that you belong in a place that is truly yours.
So it's okay to be me.
It's okay to be me.
Okay, great. On that point, I'm sure there's a restlessness brewing in the minds of the audience. We will take a couple of questions from the audience, and you can raise the question. The two panelists can respond, but please be very brief with your question, and don't make a point of view, long point of view, because if you want to make a long point of view, the Times of India will be happy to publish it in tomorrow's edition. Okay. So after that, I have a controversial question for both Kiran and Ajit, but for now, let me hold that. And so over to you. Okay, we have...
Now I think we can take the mic. Yeah.
Okay, so I decide who goes first, okay?
Okay.
So Miss, you go first, sir, you're the next. And then Miss, you go next, and then ma'am, right there. You came too late, so wait for these four first. So Miss, please go ahead.
Yes, I just want to know, like you spoke about Indianness. What is the ideal definition or maybe meaning of Indianness? As we've been influenced over the years by a lot of exterior countries. So what is Indianness according to both of you?
Ajit, why don't you actually just spoke about it?
There used to be a time when you said to be Indian meant being a Hindu. That's not true anymore, okay? It never probably was, and now we are willing to acknowledge that. And at some stage, it meant whether you're fair-skinned or dark-skinned. I mean, who is an African, you segregate. I mean, you can't make out. Even the first names of young people have all become national, Ajit and Kiran could be from any part of the world, any part of India. So I think what is emerging in my head is an Indian is a person who can tolerate wide varieties of opinions, some contradictory with each other inside his head. I compare this to my friends in France or even Americans. They don't seem to be able to hold all that in their head at all times. Secondly, being Indian means learning to live with people different from you. Because that is a fact. When you go through school and college and neighbors, you have a wide variety. India is not as segregated a country as even America can be. If you live there for a while, you see how it partitions off people by real estate prices. So I think the identity is emerging, and nowadays a big battle is being fought to make sure the role of women is more equalized in our society. That is another... it's being done in such a forceful way with no other... My women friends in other parts of the world are astonished at some of the recent legislation concerning that. So we are, taking a country with a 2,000-year-old tradition of treating women not as well as we should have, and within a period of 1 year, accelerating it into the 21st century. So all of this is going on at this time. And we are, I think, seem to be quite content with all this. Occasionally we get mad, but, that's okay. Yeah.
I want the producer of Delhi Belly and Dhobi Ghat, and Satyameva Jayate, to be answering that question.
I don't think there's any one definition of Indianness, which I'm sure everybody will agree with. We are too diverse a nation, and each and every one of us is a product of such different circumstances that we define it for ourselves. I think the fact that we belong in India and we are each of us different is, like Ajit said, just the the definition of Indianness, that we just belong to this country full of different languages, different ideologies, different political points of view. I mean, as far as the youth go, I think I would say that the way for you to define yourself as an Indian would be to do things that you're interested in and comfortable doing from the space that you come from. I've struggled with it a lot in my own work, in that I find that I'm an urban animal. I have never grown up in a village. I've had, I think, one of the more entitled upbringings of, and most of us in this room I would consider entitled, because we live in big cities. We have such amenities as power and water at the turn of a tap and things like that. So I don't know the realities of so many other Indians, so that sometimes I question my own Indianness, if you want to put it like that. But I think wearing a 9-yard sari and, you know, knowing Bharatnatyam is not necessarily doesn't necessarily make you more Indian. I think it's how you engage with other Indians, engage with the idea of India and the problems that we go through. Engaging politically with this country, I think, would be how Indian you are. We can be in a bubble of New York within India, or we could actually engage with the realities of other Indians. And I think that would be the critical thing that the youth need to do, is engage with all the other Indias while they are comfortable being in their own India. I mean, you're comfortable driving a car on the streets of Bombay, and that's very valid. But we must know that there are people who, you know, have none of the things that we have. So I would use, you know, that to actually start whenever one questions how Indian we are, or how Indian I am, for instance.
Thank you.
Depends on how inclusive and how empathetic you are.
Exactly, it's empathy.
Sir, go ahead.
So basically, my question is extending to what the earlier she asked. Somehow I get a feeling that we are becoming a highly argumentative society. Whether you watch a TV program by Arnab or all the 600 channels and the newspaper. The second aspect is somehow I think we are putting too much of negativity in our media, newspaper. Because my sons who are based in US, whenever they come here, they say, Dad, why so much of things are reported negatively? When you open the newspaper, you find everything negative. Whereas abroad, I'm told it is not so bad. So can we do something to bring some moderation, some change in the way we look at things and way we report? That is my question.
His question is, you know, I'll paraphrase that a little bit. You know, he's talking about this excessive negativity.
Yes,
and he talks about, you know, you open the newspaper, argumentativeness. He named somebody, we don't know the name here. Okay. And then he said that why is it that we're so argumentative? Why so much of bad news? Let me modify that statement. You know, isn't the film industry also responsible for amplifying that bad news?
Absolutely.
Amplifying the bad news.
Yeah, bad news.
I thought our cinema is largely so escapist. How are we amplifying it? Unfortunately, we don't even really address what's going on in much of our country, in our cinema today. That's my big problem. So I don't feel we amplify it enough. You know?
But isn't a lot that is happening in cinema getting to be mimicked? And there is a, you know, if you go to interior India today, suddenly, you know, violence is becoming mainstream, and violence is becoming very mature, and violence is becoming very heroic, if you will. So, is there an angle to it? Am I discovering a question, or would you think that? Okay.
So I would like to, I'll just address what Subroto said first. You know, Subroto, I feel that, you know, we went through a whole phase of extremely violent cinema in the 80s with, you know, all the one man beating. Yes, yeah, and you know, even the 90s actually, for some period with Sunny Deol and all the action heroes and one guy beating up many people, and usually it was always a fight of you know, a street guy beating up goons, or a poor man beating up a villain, etc. So there was always, ideologically it was always balanced the right way, but of course violence was always there. And I think violence continues to be there in cinema across the world. I'm not a great admirer or proponent of violent films. I would say our films are actually highly non-violent compared to, say, Korean films. or the films of other Southeast Asian countries where, it's extremely graphic and gruesome, and in fact, many films in the West as well, even films made by well-known people such as the Coen brothers, they have very, very violent films. Now, I think if you go into it a little bit and step away from the argument that films automatically influence behavior, I don't agree with that. I don't think films, it's not such a direct chain of influence or reaction. My feeling on that is that we need to think about why is, for instance, the news in our papers bad, and why is there violence in our films, and for instance, why do we have such bad TV serials? Why are they, when we actually introspect about that, I think we come back to the point that, especially when it comes to the newspapers, there are pretty bad things happening in our country. Violence is among the it's one of the things that we speak about the least, but it's there in almost every household, maybe not in certain elite entitled households where we don't have the struggle of every day getting our meals. But when I look at my own household and the women who work for me, they're all, without exception, victims and survivors of violence in their own homes. They are single women bringing up children in extremely violent conditions. They live in a society where, more often than not, they have no access to redressal, no access to security. So they have to actually comply with certain societal norms, otherwise they will not be given security by the state. So they are part, and they have to be complicit with certain social, requirements for them, that they have to be a certain way. And this is in big cities like Mumbai. So violence is part of everyday life. Unfortunately, or fortunately for us, we are, I think, insulated from it, being from a particular part of society. But to my mind, it's one of the things that's now being reported more and more, and therefore shocking us more and more, because I think, say 20, 25 years ago, reportage wasn't as much, and I think editors and people who were part of the media elite would not want so much violence to be reflected in the paper. So all I'd like to say is that, sir, it is a reality today. We read more every single day in the paper. We read about rape and people being killed and, hunger, starvation, and it is our reality. So I think for the first, we have to step up and accept it, despite the fact that it gives a very negative impression of India abroad. According to me, let's not think about what people think of us abroad. I think that's very secondary. They don't live here, and they can think what they like. It's important what we think about ourselves. What does it say about us as people that every day in the paper we wake up and read this, that a 16-year-old girl is gang raped? What does it say about us as a nation? And that needs to be reported. If it's not reported, you and I won't talk about it. And if you and I don't talk about it, there's a chance that it'll go unspoken for the next few generations. And I don't think we want that to happen.
Yeah, on that note, Ajit,
I
is
want
there
to
a
add
need
something
to...
this. I want to add something to this question, because this has been preoccupying me for a while. So I did some research across all people I know in television and print. And one of the things that I am starting to believe is that journalists believe, Indian journalists believe, that such stories sell. It's a very fundamental assumption. They tell this to me in confidence after the fourth ring. On television, it is believed that, particularly English language television, believes that such stories, particularly about corruption in high places, sells. I interviewed some of our own journalists in my own company, and they have similar views that some such stories apparently are welcomed by the middle class. And when I went on a hunt to see why should that be so, the underlying sociology looks something like this. The Indian middle class, which includes certainly all of us, and is going through an angst period today. Mm-hmm. And the angst arises because you open a newspaper on a particular day, Times of India, Hindustan Times, where you live. On the right side is ads for apartments which cost 4 crores and 5 crores. And on the left side of the same page are stories about 2G scam, coal scam. And the average middle class person whose standard of life is eroding compared to his parents, how they lived, looks at this and says, I'm a hardworking person. How these apartments, on earth can I even think of owning an apartment? I'm a journalist, for example, 5 crores and 4 crores. And I look to the left and see the corruption stories. I concatenate the two and say, people who can afford such things must be corrupt. Yep. And that is the angst today in India's middle class. I'm seeing it much more in Delhi when I go once a week. Yep. Much less in Bombay. In Bombay, we tend to think, there is a problem, maybe I need to work hard enough and make some money. In Delhi, they say government must be wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
Government must have something to do with this contradiction that I live. I think there is a middle class angst in our country.
Well, no I don't know if it's just middle class though, because if you look at the same story, which is very valid that you're talking about, gets published in every vernacular medium, and the taxi driver is reading that story and demanding to know why not me. And the chai stall guy in rural Maharashtra is sharing the Marathi newspaper along with 10 people, because in the villages what happens is 10 people will read the same newspaper, and sometimes the same glasses are also passed around, you know, for the elderly people. So it's a cascading problem and big problem. And we could stay on this subject for the rest of the day, but we also have paucity of time. Ma'am, you go next. No. The lady in the yellow sari there.
Ajit, I just want to make a clarification. It's not just Indian journalists who think that way. This is a worldwide thing. You are supposed to report the crime, the corruption, the rape, the whatever it is, to highlight it. That's just point number one. Kiran, this one's for you. You talked about the media, about the television and films that are creating this new culture that we're more comfortable with. What do you think of the impact of the new literature that's come out? You know, the Chetan Bhagats, Amish Tripathis and all. What sort of impact have they had on us finding our own, being comfortable in our own skin?
Right. You know, actually, when I talk about television and film, I want to make a clarification there. I think we are creating content that's probably more reflective of us as a people. It's a bit scary for me, because I don't actually subscribe to a lot of what comes on fiction, television, or, for instance, on screens as films. But certainly, yes, there's a lot more of us in our movies, and I'm happy to say that even in big mainstream Hindi, Tamil, etc., different kinds of different language films of India, there is a sense that there is not just a sort of a standardized, formulaic story or hero. And there is a little more subtlety coming through, whether it's a regional stories or stories, different women characters. I do feel that it's growing, so I do feel we're getting there. It's certainly nowhere close to where I hope it'll get. But again, I think in literature, I have to admit that I've not read enough of the best-selling Indian authors. But from what I read of their success, and especially Amish Tripathi's sort of taking, pretty much piggybacking on Indian myth and legend, and, sort of converting it into this exciting, new, modern sort of fantasy, is again a step in that direction where the stories that we've maybe just before my generation have heard since they've been growing up, they look at again in a different light. It's all exciting again, and it's become relevant. It's become contemporary. So I think it's a time that people have the space to do more things of that kind, and I think entrepreneurship and the way Indian business models have changed. Writers, T-shirt designers, people who sell different things online have created new and more contemporary cultures for us to go back to and reference.
So we'll come to you now. So your time is now. But let me ask you something. How many of you are here who are less than 25 years of age? Okay, people in the back. Oh my God, this is amazing. So this is so good, so nice. Okay, so we want two 25-year-olds to ask questions which need not be boring, need not be intellectual, okay, need not be serious stuff. It can be any question. We retain the right to answer, not to answer. personal, professional, anything. So you could ask a question to Kiran and a question to Ajit, but before that, Miss, you go.
Hello, good evening to all of y'all. It's afternoon, sorry. So my question to y'all is, the topic says India, our time is now. We see it's been a paradigm shift from the time of independence, socially, culturally, even technologically. So, but then what is one thing that pulls us back right now? According to both of y'all, what is the one problem that India faces as a country? That's it.
I'm not sure there is anything which is keeping us back. Right now, the whole world is going through an economic recession. I promise you that the problems that we have here is 1%. Some of my friends in England and France, they look at the future and say the future is a dark wall. They see no hope. What is the hope for a country like England when they look into the next 10 years? They bet everything on financial services in London, and that is imploded, never to rise again to this extent. What do the French do? They, 3 people are doing work for 1 person through their social system. So I think compared to them, everything in the future looks super bright to me. As usual, we'll have 6 of us will have 10 views on how we will achieve that future. There will be. Do not worry. I think that's how our film and media and print industry stay alive, by telling us which way to go. And there are severe challenges too, because part of it, I think, honestly, there is a middle class angst, partly because government has stopped recruiting for the last 10 years. The government used to be the main job provider for the Indian middle class. The nationalized banks have stopped recruiting and so on. Our IT services people saved us from 1991 to 2007, and they have paused a little bit. The scale at which we do things, sometimes, since I'm connected to the education sector, I can tell you, and nobody can get this right. Do you have any idea in the last decade how many colleges have gone opened in India? Throw a number at me. Yes, how many new colleges have opened in India in the last 10 years?
Colleges worth calling colleges? Or
colleges. Colleges as accredited to universities. I'm not talking of 20,000 colleges. Last year alone, India opened 3,000 colleges in 1 year. That's the scale. So a big challenge then is to see how do you deliver quality education without becoming over-legislating on that, without meting out criminal penalties as we normally do for, teachers don't teach, put them in jail, that kind of stuff. So we have the scale problems. Everywhere you have scale problems in education, in healthcare. So how to master the scale issue is a thing. And I think some of the messages learning may come from IT services companies, many of whom very comfortably recruit 20,000 people in 1 year and deploy them and make them work well. So some of the answers may also come. So I think dealing with the whole scale issue is, I think, the big thing.
I actually differ in that I think one thing that's holding us back is our education, is our kind of education. I think we need education, we need to reform education, and we have to change it right from the very primary level upwards, because people who benefit from this kind of education are people like me, who come from literate backgrounds, who are able to mug up reams and reams of information. And I think what's therefore holding us back is we have youth who are bright, who are desperate to take on the world, to do so much, but are not equipped with an education that teaches them to be inventive, to be innovative, to interpret the world around them in their own ways. And that, I think, is our big, big challenge, because despite that, thanks to just, I think, the sheer, just the fact that they're just talented and want to, the need and the desire to perform and to do things makes Indians still so entrepreneurial, so risk-taking, and, by our sheer numbers, we become that many more. But if we had an education that was relevant to our realities today as a diverse country, that actually encouraged people to be innovative and create things, to change, their different points of view were actually encouraged rather than, please produce exactly what was there in the textbook verbatim so that, you get 100%. Education, sort of analysis of how a child is done wasn't done on this marks system, but on a child's ability to interpret, taking into account that a child has so many intelligences and can do so many different things, and academia is one part of it, So once we have an education that does that, nobody can stop us as a nation. We're just waiting to take off, according to me. If we had teachers and we had an education system that encouraged people to, to fulfill their own individual potential.
Subject to 2014 elections, just so dekhte rahiye. Now, 25-year-olds, fun question, no serious stuff. Do you have a fun question to ask, Kiran or Ajit?
I have a compliment for you. I read MBA at 16. I'm actually a high school teacher.
Oh my God.
I teach business and management.
This is not a planted thing, okay? So.
No, it's absolutely not planted. I've never seen you before.
Thank you.
But this is actually my student here with me today. And so I teach business and management, and I've also used MBA at 16 in class to encourage them to be entrepreneurial. So my question to you is, how do you think we can encourage the youth to be, to instill the values of entrepreneurship? Because we have so many problems across the country, and reaching villages and reaching all these different places and solving different problems needs that entrepreneurial spirit. So how do you think we can inculcate that among students? That's my question.
So the thing that she's talking about is a book I wrote for 16-year-olds called MBA at 16. This happened after I worked with 31 kids, 14 girls and 17 boys, all 16, over a 3-month period to see what's going on in their mind about the world of business, and then wrote this little book. But the fun thing is that that book is now getting translated to other Indian languages. But on her question about entrepreneurship, I want both of you to really reflect on this. And I see you, and of course Amir, I respect him as an entrepreneur, and you represent the creative economy, actually. By the way, to just give a glimmer of hope to the Britishers, Ajit talked about the fading financial economy. The one sector which is growing higher than the GDP in Britain is the creative economy. And they're trying to rope in creative people from all over the world because they see that that could be a big advantage for Britain in the years to come. And they're saying that, look, if you put together Spice Girls, a band like Spice Girls, you don't need SEZ land. At the height of vernacular medium, and the taxi driver is reading that story and demanding to know, why not me? Of their performance, they were a billion-dollar entity. So that's non-trivial. But over to Kiran first. Talk to us about becoming an entrepreneur and what does it mean in the creative economy, in the kind of work that you do. And of course, Ajit, who was an entrepreneur even long before I became an entrepreneur. So Ajit, love to hear your views on that, particularly for young people.
Well, I don't have much entrepreneurial experience myself, but all I know is creative people have to be entrepreneurial. They have to know how to sell their ideas. They have to know how to get out there and get whatever they want done, whether you're a writer or a painter or a filmmaker or any creative person. And because entrepreneurship at the end of the day is creative. It is the ability to create an idea that people can consume, can desire, and hopefully need as well. It's not just hot air. But I think the problems again facing, if you just go back to what I said about Indian education, if you've survived it and you've come out with ideas that you would like to share with the world, then I think the only real problem in this country is the lack of structure. I find it especially in my own industry, which was of course declared an industry far too late, and was literally the product of the hard work and vision of regular individuals. Some people who had come to Bombay after partition, and a motley bunch of people who put in their own money and their own land with no help from any government, and were expected to do great things. They were just regular people. They had no CII, no business, acumen in that sense, no backing from anyone. So when I see our own industry, I see it and I'm ashamed to say, the most, it's the most crippling thing in our industry is any lack of organization and structure. Well, not enough. In the sense that today, if someone wants to actually join the film industry, they have to know somebody, they have to go through a particular channel of, okay, let's keep hanging out outside Yashraj Films and try to make friends with X, Y, and Z so I can get in and therefore get a job.
So discouraging to a student.
Well, you know, I'm putting the scenario forward so that she can see how she can deal with it, because we don't totally want to change it. I mean, this is, we are hoping to do it. It's again, in this film industries, it's a very complex thing, so I don't want to go into it because there's so many film industries across the country. So even if we just look at the Mumbai film industry, it's complex enough because each and every person who's made even a tiny little short film is a producer. So we have millions of producers in this city and state alone. So to actually get them to actually become part of a body and then look at the future of cinema and not just what will pay their bills tomorrow is a complex thing. So I just feel that that is the only thing that is a problem. I think a hurdle in entrepreneurship in my sector especially, but I assume in other places is access. Yeah, we are all part of this effort.
Make a film on entrepreneurs after Kolkata.
Okay, you know, when you discuss entrepreneurship in India, most people assume India has very few entrepreneurs. It is accurately not true. If you define entrepreneurship and the opposite of it as being a salaried employee, salaried employees in India are only 18% of the working group. All others, 82% are on their own. It could be somebody who's a domestic servant on their own, or it could be small business. And you also find this pattern saying people from quote-unquote business communities seem to, you know, be the majority of entrepreneurs. And we think that there's something in their blood genes. No such thing. No such thing. The real reason is the availability of capital in an organized way is a problem. It's an acute problem in the film industry. Some of my friends are ad filmmakers, so tangentially I know that industry. Typically what happens is if you start and you want 10 lakhs of rupees to make your first venture and your parents don't have it, if you come from a business community, they have ways of financing this. But if you come from a middle class family like mine and your dad is a doctor, and he doesn't have the money to give you, there is no way. The Indian tax system does not favor, let's say, for me to invest in a startup venture, and if that fails, that to be written off. So some of us, including myself, are pushing the finance ministry very, very hard. One step we have had a success, which is to create the limited liability partnership firm. That bill got passed after 5 years of pushing. That's one very, very important thing. The second piece is to make sure that if I, as a passive partner, invest in a partnership firm that one of you have started, and you chance 9 out of 10 you will fail. That's a rate for entrepreneurship throughout the world. And if you lose that business and I have to write it off, today under Indian income tax law, it is virtually impossible for me to write my 10 lakhs off. Whereas in the United States, I can write the full 10 lakhs off immediately. So these kind of institutional arrangements are needed to create early stage financing. Because you can't go to a bank. The risk rate is too high to start up. So no bank will say, pledge your grandfather's house, I'll give you money. So we don't want that, right? So I think we have to look at the institutional connections, and I think even in our film industry, I think in the 60s and 70s, I think smugglers were financing most of it because nobody else would. Pardon me? Yeah, because nobody else would risk the capital. Inherently, a creative product like a film, chances of success are what, 1 in 10? Absolutely. At best. And this is true in software. It is true in anything creative. So I think we have to fix the institutional arrangements for it, and some of us are pushing hard, and please join the
Thank you, Ajit. Actually, I don't mean to cut it short, but this has been an amazing conversation.
Let's have one question from under 25, from students. Yeah.
Okay.
How about that boy there in the orange t-shirt?
Okay.
Yes.
Orange t-shirt. You're not from Gujarat, are you? Go ahead.
Ma'am, you talk about much of India. Then I want to know your idea about India versus Bharat. How can you differentiate India versus Bharat?
Wow. India versus Bharat. Amazing question. You get 60 seconds to answer, and you also get 60 seconds. So, this is really nice, because I really wanted to have a forward-looking statement from each of you, and I abandoned that idea. But thank you. What's your name?
Sandeep Gupta.
Sandeep is the prize winner, next prize winner, okay? And this is real, not like 2 return ticket to moon. Okay? So this is the man, right, Kumar? So 60 seconds. Tell us India that is Bharat, India versus Bharat, and how India can become Bharat.
Actually, much of our discussion today was about that, is that I said that I feel India, we cohabit so many Indias at one time. So while I live in India, I know that there's a reality, there are many different realities that make up this nation. And I think the only way to make our nation, we'll always, I think, have this distinction as long as we have such a vast divide between rural and urban India, English-speaking India and regional languages. And I think the only way to overcome it is to include and accept and to see that Bharat also in yourself, to become multilingual, to travel in this country and to accept that we are a diverse country. That's our strength.
Well, Ajit.
The term Indian Bharat seems to normally come loaded with various value judgments. One is inequality of income. The other, sometimes I feel, is the English-speaking fluent class versus the others. Rural versus urban. I think all speaks of unequal. Bharat seems to be in some ways lesser entitled than the India portion of it. I think by the time you get to be my age, which is about 50 years from now, or 40 years from now, I hope you guys will work and solve
He wants
this
it in the next 10 years, Ajit, not by the time he is your age,
These are big issues. And the fact that at this young age you're reflecting about it, it makes me so thrilled.
Fantastic.
Actually, I want to say something. Ajit, you're absolutely right. In making this distinction, Sandeep, right, we are doing ourselves a disservice. Because we are Bharat and India. Each of us is Bharat and India, and until we feel like that, we will never be one nation. We will always have Bharat and versus India. There's no versus. We are both. Each of us is both.
I have a point to make on this. In cricket, up until 1982, India used to lose every cricket match. And, and there were people who, Oxford-educated Nawab of Pataudi, all people from St. Stephen's College and Maharaja's College and so on and so forth. Then Kapil Dev arrived. And he spoke barely any English. If you ask him, and at 83 spoke barely any English. You couldn't make a speech after the team won. That so-called Bharat, the creature from Bharat, is what took India to success. That's the difference. Yeah?
Okay, on the Lagan note, thank you for that lovely question. And first and foremost, I think we need to thank Kumar and his stellar team to have even thought about something like the non-fiction Lit Fest. May India read more non-fiction. And on behalf of all of us here on this stage, thank you to Sandeep and every member in the audience. And from my side, Kiran, thank you so much. Ajit, thank you.